Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and how are you doing today? I hope things are well and that you are enjoying your day wherever you are in the world. On Sunday, October 27th, 2019, at 6 a.m. Tokyo time. Again, Sunday, October 27th, 2019 at 6 a.m. Tokyo time. My friends, it will be my pleasure once again to have a live stream film club where I will have the great pleasure and honor and opportunity to share with you some thoughts that I have, and also to hear your thoughts and comments about the landmark work of cinema from 1968. And this is the film Night of the Living Dead. This is one of those films that I cannot begin to fully be able to state what I feel is its importance in the whole landscape of cinema, and in particular the landscape not only of U.S. horror film, not only in the context of independent cinema from the 60s and 70s onwards, but also in the context of a passionate cinema, a cinema that is filled with a lot of message and resonance, a lot of social commentary, and it is mixed with one of the most powerful metaphors for such commentary ever set to celluloid, in my opinion, namely the idea of the living dead and its effects on society, both internally and externally. And a whole lot more, my friends. This is one of the most, how shall I put it? It's one of those important works, and it is a film that I think has been talked about so much. It is a film that has been written about endlessly, and for good reason, because it is so worth it. This is Night of the Living Dead. Now, I don't claim to be able to fully cover everything that this film has in terms of its cinematic merits, so to speak. But I will try to come at this as an admirer of this film, and I will try to come at it in terms of what there is on offer in generally available materials, not least of which being, of course, the Criterion Collection release. And I have the Blu-ray here, which is spine number 909. And so, just very quickly, if I may, in preparation for the upcoming live stream, what I'd like to do is just to let you know what this Criterion release has to offer, and then we can go from there. So the Criterion Collection release, which we have here, is the 4K digital restoration, and it's a beautiful presentation, both visually and in terms of sound. There are some there are some instances in the soundtrack in particular where certain sounds emerge much more prominently than the soundtrack of the film that I am used to, growing up watching this film on many occasions. So this is in many ways a return to the classic film, but also in many ways it's a new experience when watching this particular Criterion presentation. So it's very interesting indeed. And then we have two commentaries. And these are two commentaries that have been made available elsewhere, but it's nice to have them here. So one is with George Romero, Carl Hardman, Marilyn Eastman, and John Russo. And the other commentary is by Russell Streiner and Vincent Stravinsky, Judith O'Day, William Hinsman, Kate Rochon, and Keith Wayne. So these are two, I think, rather informative commentaries. Again, these are commentaries that haven't. They're not exclusive to the Criterion collection, but it's nice to have them carried over from other sources. But what's also great about this release, of course, is that the Criterion collection has also included what's considered to be a kind of work print version of the film called Night of Anubis, or it has the title of Night of Anubis, which is in many ways it's like a rough draft of the film. And also in many ways it does serve to provide kind of insight into what the filmmakers were thinking in terms of certain setups, etc. So I think it's a really exceptional source of further information about what the process was and how this masterpiece ended up coming together. So this is what's on the first disc. Did I mention that? This is a multi-disc, this is 2-disc Blu-ray release. So on the first disc you have the materials in the film as I've just suggested to you. Then on the second disc we have more supplemental materials, which I think are fascinating. So the first is a kind of documentary appreciation, which is called Light in the Darkness, featuring filmmakers like Frank Darabont and Robert Rodriguez and Guillermo del Toro, who are just expressing their love and admiration and appreciation for this film as filmmakers and also as fans. So this is really nice because it's just further cementing of the way in which this film's reputation has just grown and grown and grown. So it's really nice to have that appreciation. And then we have a selection of dailies of the film, which are also kind of different shots, different takes of certain scenes, some of which ended up in the film, many of which did not. And so you have different alternative takes, etc., that are comprised in this reel of dailies. Again, it's very interesting. I think there was a particular moment in the middle of the film that is a very famous moment. It's called it's affectionately known as the basement jump cut, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit during the live stream itself if I have the opportunity. But perhaps many people were hoping that maybe the answer to the basement jump cut might be included here, but I think instead what we have are just more ways in which we can see the consideration and the thinking behind the filmmaking and the choices and the editing and the pacing and the angles in particular. So and also the kinds of situations and limitations that the filmmakers found themselves in. And in fact, it's a further celebration of how these filmmakers were able to take advantage of what they had despite their limitations to create this awe-inspiring work. So then that's the dailies. And then there's another there's an interview with John Russo, which is called Learning from Scratch, which is talking about the background of this crew and how it came to be, and the sorts of, again, a further explanation of their limitations in terms of filmmaking and how they tried to overcome those limitations accordingly. It's really fascinating. It's really great to hear from John Russo like this. And then there is what's called TV newsreel, and this is sort of handheld behind-the-scenes footage that was, I understand, held by or kept by Bill Cardille. And so this has been, I think it was shot on film and then it was saved onto VHS, so you have that presentation there. So it's rough, it's no sound, but it's really great. Again, another aspect of the film is this sort of newsreel type of stuff that was going on, and this is what was going on outside of the farmhouse, etc. So this is just more background, behind the scenes footage. Again, further glimpse into what was going on. Really great stuff. And then there is Walking Like the Dead, which is one of the most fascinating supplements, which goes and interviews a number of people who played zombies, or I should say living dead, in the film. And we talk about how they ended up being in the film. And this is also about the approach of George Romero and the crew, and how they were making the film, and certain stories and anecdotes, and also what they were thinking when they were trying to act as these monsters. So, this is one of the really interesting supplements that's on here. And then there's another supplement called Tunes of Terror, which is a supplement talking about the use of music in this film. The use of music is really one of the most fascinating aspects of this, and hopefully I will try to get into that as well in the live stream. But that is a great supplement here about the music. And then there is another great short called it's a short supplement called Limitations into Virtues, which is by Tony Joe and Taylor Ramos, and this is from these are the team behind the famous Every Frame a Painting. And what they've done is they've created a sort of video essay talking about the style and the filmmaking craft, and how that went into further augmenting and emphasizing specific elements of the approach to the style, and how that affected the narrative, etc. And I think generally speaking, they're talking about it in terms of, broadly speaking, a kind of cinema verite approach on the one hand, or a seemingly cinema verite approach on the one hand, or maybe documentary style or faux documentary style on the one hand, and then also a very set, rigid filmmaking, narrative focused style on the other, and how these tend to balance each other out, or how they play on each other, which is really fascinating. Then there is the program Tomorrow with Tom Snyder. This is broadcast from July 1979, and this is Tom Snyder's show with guests George Romero and Don Coscarelli. And so Don Coscarelli, of course, is famous for the Phantasm films as well as other films, and then talking with George Romero and him about horror and the horror genre, etc. And then we have a supplement called Higher Learning, which is actually a recording of a talk that George Romero gave, sort of an on-stage interview he gave at, I believe it was the Toronto International Film Festival in November 2012. And this is really great because it's talking rather intimately with George Romero about Night of the Living Dead, and also certain other films by Romero that were screened at TIFF at the time, including films like Martin, etc., Day of the Dead, etc. So what's great about it is that George Romero is still he's very energetic, he is filled with life, he is very modest, he is very self-effacing, and he's very charming on stage, and it's wonderful to hear him speak like this, and to see also that he is experiencing a a young audience at TIFF that is still so showing of its appreciation of the works of George Romero. It's really lovely, absolutely lovely stuff. And it's really long too. It's about 45 minutes, I think, maybe more. So it's really nice sort of Q&A session, and also a talk that he gave at TIFF from 2012. He also talks about Land of the Dead as well, which is really interesting. And then there's an audio interview with Duane Jones from 1987. This was carried over from another release. And there's also an interview from 1994 with Judith Ridley as well. This is also something that was carried over. And then there is a 1967 newsreel of the spacecraft that was apparently kind of the basis for the Venus probe. You know, the Night of the Living Dead film focuses some of its plot on this idea of the Venus probe. And so we have the 1967 newsreel footage as another supplement, which is really great. And then we have trailers and radio spots, and then I think it's 2 TV spots to round out the supplements that are found on the second disc of this Criterion Collection release. And then there is Stuart Klawans providing an essay for the, it's not booklet, but it's a fold-out poster, which is right here, and the back indicates the essay like so. It's a really great read. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of these fold-out posters. I personally like the booklets better, but you know, it's a very minor point in my opinion. I think the content is ultimately what matters, and if we're looking at the content, then the essay here called "Mere Anarchy is Loosed." It's a really great title, and the essay is fantastic. I strongly recommend reading it if you have a chance before the live stream. Really great, really great. And I just have to point out here the artwork here too is just lovely. Night of the Living Dead here on the front, and then the back. And this is of course a digipack, so we have the usual digipack inside, as it were, and we open it up here, and then we have the 2 discs housed like so, and then the continuation of the cover design motif included here. It's really great. And then I've pulled it out for purposes of this video, of course, but the fold-out poster would of course be housed in here for purposes of keeping the Blu-ray and putting it on one's shelf. So there we have Night of the Living Dead as provided by the Criterion Collection. I should say one extra thing, which is I have, over the course of my life, owned a number of this DVDs and VHS copies of this film over the course of my life. And but unfortunately now, because of certain circumstances in my own life and moving, etc., I've only been able to keep this film on the Criterion release and also on this DVD release, which is an earlier DVD release. There have been other earlier DVD releases of this film, and so if one is looking for well, let me take a step back. As much as I love this Criterion release, and believe me, I really do love it. I think it's filled with a lot of great information and presents the film with a lot of respect and care and dignity. There are some supplements that have been made available on other releases of this film, Night of the Living Dead, that unfortunately do not make their way on this particular Criterion release. Granted, of course, some of those supplements, for instance, on the Elite release, DVD release of the film, which I think is really great. I don't have that, unfortunately, but it's really great. That's a kind of classic release of the film on DVD, and it was one of the first real packed presentations of that film. And there have been other DVD releases of the film Night of the Living Dead that came prior to the Criterion collection. And a lot of the supplements that are found there haven't made their way onto the Criterion release. Some of them have, but not all of them. So some of them, like the commentary tracks, came from those earlier releases. Some of the archival interviews, for instance with Dwayne Jones, etc., those came from earlier DVD releases. But you're not getting all of what has come before. So if you want to have a complete set of all supplements ever made, you're going to have to do a lot of collecting of different versions of Night of the Living Dead. Not to mention, of course, the colorized version, and as I said, the version with the extra footage added on, etc. So there have been a lot of takes and approaches to the release of this film over the course of many years, and so I don't have, unfortunately, the ability to be able to speak to all of them, and it won't be my point to talk about all of those releases during the live stream. I'm going to be focusing on the film itself, but there is, I think, one supplement in particular that I personally love, and it's really unfortunate that it didn't manage to find its way onto the Criterion release. But let me just bring that one example of a supplement to your attention, which is on this particular DVD release. This is what's purported to be the 40th anniversary release of the film from Dimension. And this is great because it has the Dwayne Jones interview, and it has the 2 audio commentary tracks that you can still get in the Criterion release. But it has also, among other things, this great documentary called One for the Fire. It's really long, and it's very informative and packed with information. Now, that documentary, One for the Fire, unfortunately didn't make it to the Criterion release, which is a shame. So if you're able to track down any other non-Criterion release, I would suggest, as an example, getting this, if for anything, the opportunity of being able to watch that documentary, which I think is really helpful, and it presents information in a very clear way. But be that as it may, of course, you still have a great presentation and great supplements on the Criterion disc, so you're not missing out on anything in terms of having only the Criterion disc. However, it is a film that has been presented on numerous occasions, and so I know that there are a lot of people who collect all the versions of Night of the Living Dead on VHS, on DVD, Blu-ray, Laserdisc even. So I really admire that very much. And if you want the whole gamut in terms of the entirety of the supplements and the extra materials on this film, you're going to have to do a lot of collecting in order to be complete on that. I'm not complete on that necessarily, but I do have, as an example, this earlier DVD release, which, as I suggest, has a really great documentary, which I would strongly recommend. So, my dear friends, this will be the subject of discussion Sunday, October 27th, 2019 at 6 a.m. Tokyo time. It'll be my pleasure to share with you my thoughts about this, and also to hear what it is you have to say. I think, again, this is one of those films that I have known about. I've seen it so many times ever since I was little. And so I can't remember a time not knowing this film. And I went through all the phases of the film. I went through when it was colorized, and when they had the new, they re-released it with the new footage, and they shot the new footage and all that, and all the releases. I tried I don't collect all the releases, but I've seen my fair share of them. And so and then it came back. It came into the Criterion collection a couple years ago, and here we are. So Night of the Living Dead is a film that, as I say, I feel like I know based on my childhood, At the same time, I'm not a scholar, I'm not an academic when it comes to the study of this film. And believe me, I think this is a film that is so worth studying in film studies and in cinema studies and history and U.S. history, etc. It's one of those key moments in cinema for so many reasons, and for that I think it's just filled to the brim with so much information and subject matter. But unfortunately, I was never able to formally study this, so I won't necessarily be equipped in terms of the most potent and sharpest comments that have ever been made about the film. On the contrary, my comments will be very rough and very blunt, but I will try my best. And so, as a fan and admirer of this film, I'll certainly try my best. So, but more importantly for me, my friends, as always, is the opportunity to be able to hear from you and your thoughts and comments. And so it would be my pleasure to see you again Sunday, October 27th, 2019 at 6 a.m. Tokyo time. It'll be a live stream, and so you can join in the live chat and talk with me, talk with others, and we can go from there. So once again, next time for the live stream, it'll be my pleasure to discuss with you this film, Night of the Living Dead. Okay, my friends, that's it for now. So until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well. And please, please, please keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. So until we meet again, my friends, cheers.